Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Town Manager Download, a podcast about local government in the town of Shrewsbury. I'm Kevin Mizikar, the Town Manager of the town of Shrewsbury, and as always, I'm joined by Communications Coordinator Taylor Galusha.
In today's episode, we are going to be joined by Fire Chief Seth Colby to talk about his transition from Deputy Fire Chief to Fire Chief and the development of the fire department's strategic plan. Last time Seth was on the podcast was around episode 27, where we talked about emergency management. So if you want more information about emergency management in Shrewsbury, or just to hear Seth's last episode, definitely check it out. It was a super fun and robust conversation.
Another return guest. How's everything going, Taylor?
Good. Nice weather this weekend, so...
Yep.
Got to spend time outside, which it actually feels like real spring because the tulips are coming up and the crocuses. So I think we've made it out of the, hopefully knock on wood, the worst of it for the winter.
I feel like it's also the longest part of winter sometimes.
It is, yeah. But even with the rain today, it was still relatively warm. So
we're into all the
fingers crossed.
alleged springtime activities like budget hearings and the budget process, and St. Patrick's Day today when we're recording this episode.
And if you watch, we're both wearing green, so
that's right.
We passed.
We did pass. First time in ages. What's up in the shrew?
I would love if you could talk about your budget roundtables you've been doing.
Yeah.
It's the first year we've done this, and it kind of was like, I don't want to say spur of the moment, but I know you and I are always looking for more opportunities to engage in one-on-one, smaller group settings that might be more comfortable for residents to ask questions and learn more. So I know we've only done one so far, but would love to hear how it's been going. And
we stole the principles that we have set for those, right? Because the budget is a big document, a big process that we go through, and we've heard from residents a lot over the last 2 years or so that they're looking for opportunities to engage in forums other than that what can be conceived of challenging or scary or intimidating public hearing process, and those occur in front of seated boards and committees, whether it's the select board or the finance committee. So kind of building off of the momentum that we've had over the last, 6 months or so, that we've done town manager office hours.
Yeah.
And then the creation of the Common Ground Roundtable series to do better direct dialogue and engagement with residents in small group settings. We figured we'd give this a chance. So the topic is the budget. In those meetings, I don't have anything prepared. I certainly have the budget document and some details to help guide a conversation, but I am looking for residents to come with questions or ask about a particular part of the budget process, or just ask me for an overview and how something may work. So the first one was really good. We had good attendance, a good conversation. It lasted probably 50 minutes. All attendees decided to stay the whole time.
Yeah.
And so we answered questions. Some of them were town meeting members, some of them weren't. So it's kind of a variety of folks that came, which was exciting because it always gives me a different way and perspective of thinking about the budget as well. So it's mutually beneficial. I enjoyed it. And we'll have another one coming up here on March 18th. I know that will be already after this episode or before this episode actually airs. But look for other opportunities to do that, not only on a specific topic basis, like maybe the annual town meeting warrant, but then just generally with residents throughout the course of spring and summer. It'll be good.
I think so. I think, like you said, like those smaller conversations always give new perspective to things and come at it from an angle we might not have thought about before, which is always helpful. I think when you're in the weeds of things, sometimes you can get a little lost between stuff. So having that like higher level overview question and answer, I think helps everybody. So what else is going on this year?
So I'm excited because I'm hosting a group of local government leaders beginning of next week to talk about artificial intelligence and its application in local government. I wish could have invited the whole state, but we had to pick a group of folks that were interested in engaging on the topic, and kind of learning from each other. Will be facilitated by a local government consultant, and trying to build ways that we can use artificial intelligence on a day-to-day basis in local government. So will be an interesting approach to see what people bring to the table, what other communities are doing, how we can all learn from each other, and then how it might be able to be applied across a number of municipalities. A particular approach or a particular agent or a particular tool might be able to be applied broadly or more broadly across local government. So I know other states have kind of put together policies or plans or local government oriented documents, but I'm interested in engaging with some folks from across the state and see what we come up with. So that should be fun, should be interesting, and an engaging day of activities.
Yeah, love to be on the cutting edge, right?
Yeah, should be interesting, especially on this one. We're also we had a preliminary conversation with the select board at their last meeting, but likely have to take a step back and pause on the facilities optimization project. For a number of reasons, that project seems to have kind of escaped the bounds of the budget that we put in place for it. And we're really at a point in time where we don't see the value of moving the project for what that original budget was set out. And we don't want to just continue down the line because we started it. We made a commitment to residents on what the impacts and the cost of the project scope would be. And unfortunately, those two things didn't align, the scope and the budget. So we need to go back and look at the scope again, see if there's anything that can be adjusted to still bring the value to the project, but it's likely not going to happen this spring. Project is still very much needed. Everyone knows things are not getting cheaper or easier as we move into the future, but again, when we commit to a project, we have such a good track record of our capital improvement projects. We set forth with a project and scope of work, and we deliver, on time and at or under budget. And at this preliminary phase, we can clearly see that we're not going to be able to do that. So if we can't stand up to the commitments that we made to the community, we have to pull back on the project, and that's what we're going to do, at least in the interim on this project. So it's very disappointing, but at this point, it's our only option, in my opinion.
Makes sense. And, good to kind of show the other end of a process too. We've had, like you said, a lot of successful building projects in town, but sometimes it doesn't always come to fruition on the first try, and rework it and do whatever's best for the community.
And the investment that we've made through the 60% design is not lost. It will be utilized at some point. The project is needed. Those buildings on South Street are late 60s, early 1970s, as we've talked about. They're in dire need. The town hall HVAC system, which is what has been designed so far at the 60% design level, is 27 years old, so it's not going to get any younger. We'll have to take on that project at some point in time. So sure. Older. Sure. But anyway, we'll be able to leverage that at some point in the future when we do have the opportunity to bring a valuable project forward. So those are the big things going on. Like I said, talked about the budget a little bit, talked about our initiative surrounding that. We're on our way to town meeting here in 2 short months, I guess. Just 2 short months from today will be an annual town meeting, and hopefully the weather just keeps getting warmer along the way.
Agreed.
So that takes us to, I know, what will be another exciting conversation. We will have Fire Chief Seth Colby join us here in just a minute. Seth was appointed as Fire Chief effective August 1st, 2024. and has really hit the ground running and is doing a lot of strategic planning work. And I look forward to having a great conversation with him about his vision for the fire department and his experience in his first 6, 7, 8 months on the job. So without further delay, let's welcome Seth Colby to the Town Manager Download. So we're pleased to have Fire Chief Seth Colby join us on the Town Manager Download. Chief, welcome back.
Thank you.
First time in your role as chief, so congratulations formally. We know you've been in the position since the beginning of last August. Why don't you just take an opportunity to remind listeners about your background, education, tenure with the town, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I started as a call firefighter a long time ago, and got hired full-time in 1997. Worked my way up through the ranks, did a while as captain, and then as deputy chief, and then this past August got promoted to chief. I was actually in college when I got hired full-time as a firefighter, so I finished up my college education part-time while working full-time. But I've worked my way up through, I got an associate's in fire science, and I got my bachelor's in fire science, and I finally ended up with a master's in public administration.
Mm-hmm. Great. So tell us about the transition. So you were deputy chief, obviously, before you became chief. You didn't have the opportunity to serve in the rank of lieutenant because that didn't exist as you were on your way up. We just created that a couple of years ago. But how's the transition from deputy chief been, and maybe what's something that surprised you or you didn't anticipate?
Yeah, it's been a great transition. I served as the deputy for about 5 years. Chief Vona, his retirement was planned, so he had done a lot to help prepare me for the role to be able to step in as fire chief. I had a lot of great experience doing various job functions over the last year or two. But no, it's been great. The department is great. It's a great group of firefighters that worked with me and made it a smooth transition. So yeah, I've been really lucky. There's also a great group of chiefs in the state. So I'm a member of FCAM, which is the Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts. I already knew, I was a member of that as the deputy, so I already knew a lot of chiefs throughout the state. And they're a great resource. I can send them an email, I can give them a phone call or a text, and there's, not saying nothing could happen here that hasn't already happened somewhere else, but for the most part, anything that happens here, somebody has already dealt with it, and it's kind of a, phone a friend, and I can call and get support. So it's been great.
So you talked about, well, I'll call succession planning. Is there any secrets to that as you were coming through as deputy, or was it kind of just learning on the job, the chief giving you opportunities to do things that he had otherwise done? I know you had a specific focus as emergency management director as your time with deputy chief, but is there any mystery behind it, or is that pretty much what it was? Yeah.
So when I first started, so you had mentioned lieutenants being new. When I got on the department, there were 4 captains, 1 per shift, and 1 chief, and that was it.
Okay.
Over the years, a deputy was added, I believe in 2017, 16 or 17. So I was actually the second deputy chief of the department, and then we added 4 lieutenants in 2019, and then we were able to add 4 more a few years later. But yeah, there was when I first got on, there was very little opportunity for growth, and it was actually discouraging, right, for a new firefighter to look at this and say, I could work my 32-year career and only have 1 or 2 opportunities over that whole time to possibly get promoted. So creating those other officer positions, certainly operationally, is very advantageous, but it's also it's great when people come now. They have much more opportunity, and they have, I think we've seen it in the last lieutenant's exam that we did, that we had, I think it was 16 people that took the test, which is for a department our size was a great number to have that many people that are interested in advancing through the ranks. Whereas before, I think if there weren't those opportunities there, we would see 3, 4, 5 people maybe that would take a promotional exam.
I'm going to put you on the spot, and I don't mean to, but I'm just actually curious. Do you know how many fire chiefs there have been? Since I have no idea.
Don't.
Do you know a range or not? You have any idea?
At least 2.
I'll go as far as say 3.
Yeah, I don't know how many there have been total.
Yeah.
I do know that, so Chief Warner had been chief for 14 years,
Sure.
which was a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Going back, I know, the 4 or 5 chiefs prior to that were about 10 years each,
Okay.
each as chief. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm not sure the exact number.
Yeah, interesting. We'll have to dig that out of,
The
or
annual
put that
reports.
together somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, figure that out. So let's talk about maybe a little bit about the future then. So what are your initial goals for the department? At least in the short term, is there anything you'd like to change, or how have you thought about that since you've come on into the role?
Sure. So we're already talking about officers and the officer positions we've created. So one of the things that we hadn't really stayed on top of is updating all of our policies and procedures and how we operate. So we went from having a shift with 1 officer that supervised 3 stations to now we have 3 officers on each shift, so there's an officer at each station. So we've gone back and we're going through the policies and a lot of things that were done, and not just the officers, but we increased the staffing. So we had station 2 and 3 had an engine with just 2 firefighters on them with no officer. So not only did we not have supervision, but we were also
Running short a little bit.
50% of what the national best practices, right? NFPA recommends 4, a minimum of 4 per piece. So we're at half of that and no supervision. So by adding the lieutenants, we're now up to 3 on each of those engines with a supervisor. So that's given us a lot more flexibility in how we operate. The captain used to have to leave headquarters and go on pretty much every call because they were responsible for every call. Now they only have to go on, they respond to calls that multiple companies go to be the incident commander.
Mm-hmm.
That allows them to have time to do other administrative tasks and such. They're involved with fire prevention, all the things that come along with managing personnel, putting in, managing vacation time and sick time and filling shifts, we do hot work details when there's welding and other hot work, so they have to schedule that stuff. So it's allowed them to focus more on that. Every year our call volume goes up, and aside from the fact that we need to be able to respond to that takes away from all the other non-emergency stuff that the officer used to do. It takes more and more time away from that. So by getting these other officers, that's really allowed us to get them to be able to focus, the captains to be able to focus on some of the other stuff. So one of the things that we did was looking at the policies and procedures, but we've also gone through and now we've created officer assignments for all of them. The captains all had, call them tertiary responsibilities to being a shift captain. One of them was the training officer, one of them did fire prevention, one of them did equipment. Now that we have 12 officers across all the shifts, we're able to break that up and kind of reassign them. So now we still have a training officer, we have fire prevention and equipment, but we've also been able to create community engagement officers. We have a hazmat tech that does the hazmat inspections and all the garages and flammable and combustible liquids. So we've really been able to better utilize those positions and give them all secondary responsibilities aside from just being a shift officer.
Where would you kind of position the Shrewsbury Fire Department in kind of the world of best practices in Massachusetts? I know we've worked together, whether it was when you were a captain or the deputy chief and working on staffing and making sure that we getting closer to an adequate amount of staffing. But with staffing and assignments and the changes that we've made over the last few years, how do you feel we're positioned?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think we're positioned well.
Yeah.
Right. I think we provide great service to the community. We have a lot of dedicated well-trained firefighters. It's tough to compare departments to departments because there's so many variables. So right now we contract with UMass for an ambulance, so that frees up a lot of it frees us up from being, we still go on medical calls. We do a lot of EMS. We did over 3,000 EMS calls last year. But we respond with an engine, and we stabilize the patient until the ambulance gets there, and we have oxygen and Narcan and defibrillators, and you know, there's we could pull up specific cases where the outcome would not have been successful had it not been for the firefighters being there. But it also gives us a much quicker turnaround time, because we stabilize the patient. I said we can defibrillate them, we can do all these things, and then they're transported to the hospital by the ambulance. So our average turnaround time on an EMS incident is just over 20 minutes from the time that we respond on scene, and then we're back, headed back to quarters. So that gives us the ability to respond to more calls, as well as vehicle accidents, extrication, fire, and other calls. If we compare ourselves to a department, which most of them around us have an ambulance, now that 20-minute call for us is maybe an hour and 20-minute call by the time you transport them to the hospital, give your patient care report, get the ambulance back. So by not having that, like if you just compare number of firefighters in Shrewsbury versus number of firefighters in another community, you're kind of comparing apples and oranges. But no, I think Shrewsbury's been very proactive, and I think does a great job with staying ahead of it, and it's going to continue to be a challenge. It has been a challenge, and it's going to continue as population grows. Again, NFPA standard is at a single-family house fire, which is most of what we have. I mean, we have a lot of apartment complexes too, but the majority of our fires are single-family houses. The standard calls for a minimum of 17 firefighters. We have 11 on shift, and then we lose one to dispatch, and then we lose one if they're on vacation. So the way we get to that 17 firefighter mark right out of the gate is that we call Northborough and Westborough, and we get a mutual aid engine from Northborough, and we get a mutual aid ladder company from Westborough on the reported fire. So years ago, we used to wait until we got there, we saw what we had, we said, oh, this is this is getting away from us, or this is too much for us to handle, and then we would call mutual aid. And now, in order to meet that standard, is we get everybody on the road right up front, and then we can always back them off if we don't need them. Just a couple hours before coming here, Northborough had a reported basement fire, and we started engine 3, started that way, and they ended up getting backed off. But that's how all of us in the area are able to meet to meet that standard, and we're not regionalized, but in a lot of respects we act as a regional department where we send back and forth to help each other out.
So thinking about some other short-term things, I know a lot of departments have really stepped up and increased their community engagement, and the fire department has done the same. So what exciting things you have to talk about in that area?
Yeah, so I said earlier, right, we assigned a community engagement officer, and we also have we have a community engagement officer, and we have a SAFE officer. So SAFE is the student awareness and fire education. So by breaking those up, it had always kind of been lumped together. By breaking them up, we're able to focus the SAFE program, which is intended for schools, and so really anything that's involved with the school-age children goes through one officer, and then we have the community engagement, which has allowed us to do. Last year we did the Youth Fire Academy for the first time ever. It was a great success, a lot of positive feedback. We plan to do it again this year. July hasn't been advertised yet, but you'll hear it here first. July 14th, the week of July 14th is what we have scheduled. So we did that last year. It was a great success. We had a couple of sponsors, Shrewsbury Credit Union and Thrive Realty, both sponsored the program to help, so we didn't have budget impact.
Great.
And awesome. We're going to do that again. So there was that. We got involved with a lot of stuff with the recreation department. We did the what did we do? Truck or treat. We
Did the food truck festival
the food
too.
food truck festival. We partnered with the police department for their night out when they did their community night out. They've been doing it for a number of years, and we'd always send a truck, send a fire truck there. And this past year, we got more involved with them. We actually brought a lot of our partners from the State Department of Fire Service. We brought the forest fire people. We brought some bomb techs. So we kind of partnered with them and did that. So yeah, they've been doing a lot of really great stuff with the community.
Great. What's around the horizon, or what's over the horizon from that? What do you see for long-term goals for the department?
So long-term, continue to keep up with growth, which is a struggle. One thing that we do need to look at, and we've talked about in the past, is creating some day positions. As I said, as the call volume goes up, same as I talked about the captain, right? When they had to go on every call that happened on your shift, they were struggling to be able to do all their administrative duties. And kind of the same thing is happening with fire prevention and training and the other stuff, where the more calls they have, the less they're available to do other stuff. So we use on-duty crews to do a lot of inspections, and they'll go, and then they're halfway through the inspection, they get a call and have to leave.
Right.
And now we've just left a homeowner or a business owner like, yeah, we'll be back sometime. So that's one challenge that we're going to have to look at in the future. Is we've been able to do the fire prevention and some of these other duties, like I said, with shift, with emergency responders. But as the emergency calls go up, it makes it more challenging to do that. So that's certainly one thing. And then there's the world of VMS, and who knows where that's going to take us. It's really since COVID, since 2020, the industry as a whole, I think, took a hit. There's a lot of people that got burnt out, a lot of EMS workers that just got burnt out,
Right.
and either retired early or just got out. They didn't retire, they just got out. So this isn't, I've had enough. And there's a lot of young people that looked at it and said, I don't want to get into that. There's just, in general, the whole healthcare system has a lot of challenges. There's the EMS side and that, but there's also the hospital side, where the EMTs will bring a patient to the hospital, and this has gotten much better, but they could have to wait 30 minutes or an hour to transfer care to the hospital, because the hospital doesn't have the staff. So now that affects your turnaround time and the ability to go do another call. So when it's a longer turnaround time, you have X number of ambulances, and if they have to add, even if it's 20 minutes to each incident, right, that's less calls they can do during the day. So you need more trucks, and the reality is there's less ambulances on the road. So everybody's been struggling with that, and again, relying a lot on mutual aid and both private sector ambulances and fire department based ambulances. But it's definitely better than it was. 2020 was definitely the worst, but it's still a struggle, and it's really a struggle with trying to find qualified people that want to be EMTs. It's very difficult to hire.
Yeah. I mean, this is a unique opportunity. We've talked about it, a couple times in the past about establishing our own ambulance within the fire department here in Shrewsbury. You talk about those mutual aid partners. I know right now we're all, take and no give, so to speak, when it comes to providing direct mutual aid services. We certainly have our partner in UMass Ambulance, but Westboro and Northborough and those groups come into town an awful lot, and we appreciate their services. But it's an opportunity for us to kind of contribute and increase the professionalism and professional staffing that exists within the region, without taking away from anyone else, and do a little bit of more of our own fair share directly. And I think the approach that we've talked about taking, was not necessarily a pilot approach, but a deliberate approach into, providing that additional ambulance within the region and going one ambulance to start with, and then, basic life support, and then moving from there. So it's a lot of work, I know, that we have to do, that we've been talking about, and that you're thinking a lot about and moving forward already. And hopefully we can get there in the next few years with that big endeavor.
It is. It's a huge step, but I think I think the time is right. I think the need is there, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to be able to provide a service to the community, and ensure that we're able to maintain that level of service. We have a great relationship with UMass. UMass has done a great job and continues to do a great job for us. But by looking to bring that ambulance in-house, that allows us to control the level of service that we provide, and like you said, be able to work with the other communities. We have Boylston, Northborough, and Westborough Fire are routinely in town to back UMass up and do calls, but we have no way to back them up ever.
Right.
Yeah.
So with your appointment to chief, that obviously vacated the deputy chief's position, and we're fortunate to be able to make the appointment of two deputy chief from within the ranks. Kevin Weigold, who was a lieutenant within the department, was appointed deputy chief last fall. So why don't you talk a little bit about the deputy and what role he plays within the department?
Yeah. Kevin Weigold is the new deputy. He's been great. He stepped right into the role. He did have a little bit of warning, because after we went through the interview process and announced that he was going to be, I made him wait a couple months before he could start, because we were short several positions, and I didn't want to pull another person off the line. So he continued to function on his shift for a couple of months before he started in, I guess it was the end of September was when he started. So, no, Kevin's great. He's been with the department for over 20 years. He grew up in Shrewsbury, lifelong resident of Shrewsbury. His primary goal, his primary function is he oversees all the fire prevention activities, which, like I said earlier, is getting more and more challenging. So he's the only one that's quote unquote dedicated to fire prevention. So he coordinates it and relies on the on-duty crews to do a lot of the inspections, which again is where we run into the challenge when they get pulled away to go on an emergency. But he does that, all the commercial plans reviews. He works very closely with building inspector's office and doing all that.
So he's reviewing plans for new buildings, plan for alterations of buildings, commercial buildings, larger residential. What else is involved in fire prevention? What else comes in?
So he does pretty much all the commercial stuff. Okay. And like you said, some of the larger residential, certainly any of the multifamily residential he does. The single family homes, that's normally the captains do that on shift. They review the plans, they do all the inspections on that. Okay. But yeah, he does all the plans reviews, and then there's all the inspections throughout the construction process, making sure that everything is there, all the fire protection systems are installed to code, doing rough inspections on that. So sprinkler system, fire alarm, making sure that they do the pressure tests on the sprinklers, and those are all in by design and by code. It really is a massive undertaking. And then on top of that, he handles a lot of the day-to-day activities as well. So he and I have split up the responsibilities, but we communicate regularly every day. When he first started, I actually scheduled regular check-in meetings with him and put them in the calendar, and I think we've only used them once because we're constantly checking in with each other. So, but yeah, we each have our own kind of areas of responsibilities and projects that we oversee, but we keep each other informed so that when he's out, I can step in and fill in for him, and vice versa. But yeah, he's been very valuable. Yeah.
That's an interesting transition, right? I mean, when you're a lieutenant, you're a first responder. You're going out on the trucks, right? You're in turnout gear at incidents, and then, not that there's never an opportunity, but it's less likely of an opportunity, especially on it's kind of a few times a year, hopefully for all of us, because
Right.
it's a major incident where you all would be in that level of command on a scene. But how did that transition work for you, and how do you think it's working for Kevin? Do you miss that? I guess you don't have to speak for Kevin. Do you
Yeah,
miss
no,
that?
it's definitely an adjustment, right? So I went through that adjustment when I became the deputy. And yeah, you go from working 24-hour shifts a week to working Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, and then getting all the calls, because that's the other thing, right? So he's the fire prevention, but that doesn't end at 5 o'clock when he goes home.
Right.
When they go out and they go on a call and they find an issue that's a safety issue that needs to be addressed, all of a sudden one of us are getting that phone call on Saturday or Sunday or whatever needs to be done to follow up on it. But no, it's definitely a big adjustment. But after over 20 years of sleeping in the station, to be home every night in my bed it's a nice adjustment. It's a nice
A little
adjustment. So,
comfier.
yeah, but it's a lot different, right? You go from having to do your errands on a Saturday and a Sunday with the rest of the world, instead of being able to do it on a Wednesday when the stores are all empty, and
Right.
Yeah.
yeah,
The
for
grocery
sure.
store rush.
Yeah.
So, in consideration of kind of the long term and the near term goals, I know the department's been working on a new strategic plan, and you put out a survey to get some resident engagement and feedback in that process. Anything that you learned from that, and what do you think the department will focus on for the next few years based upon that resident feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. So Taylor was great. She did all the hard work on getting the survey compiled, and we just kind of came up with the questions, and she made it all happen. So thank you for that. But yeah, we made a survey that was unique for both residents, businesses, and contractors. So we had different questions depending on which category you were in, and we got some great feedback. By far, it was the resident response was the biggest. We had relatively small response from the business community and the contractors, but it was all good information. One of the takeaways, one of the questions we asked them was how they get their information from the fire department, about the fire department, and the number one way that they get their information is from the town's website, closely followed by the Shrewsbury Connect quarterly newsletter, and then social media. So, I mean, that was important for us to know, because we need to know how we can get our message out to the community, not just not just on a daily basis, but we need to get information out before an emergency, during an emergency. So knowing that 50% get their information from social media is great. So if we have an emergency and we have to send a message out that you should shelter in place or avoid an area, or that there's a storm coming, and or there's a shelter that we're going to open because of the damage from a hurricane, if we rely just on social media and the website, we know we're only going to reach 50% of the community. So we need to find other avenues. So having that information is certainly very valuable. But that was one of the big takeaways there. The vast majority felt our emergency response, time, effectiveness, knowledge, skills, profession, all that rated very well. One of the areas that we did see that we need to work on, which coincides with what we've been doing with the community outreach, was about 50% of the respondents were they were neutral. They had no opinion on public education and outreach and that kind of stuff. And then there were a few that thought we didn't do enough, a few that thought we did, but the vast majority really didn't know what we did. So that was a big takeaway. And like I said, we've done the SAFE program for years, always done very, very well with that, but that's in the schools, predominantly the elementary schools. So we were doing a very good job at reaching all the school-age kids, but what we weren't doing was a great job at reaching the rest of the community. So that's why we're looking into other ways. Another event that we had done was we offered a car seat check. So we'll check a car seat anytime. We have several firefighters that are certified car seat installation techs. They've been through the training and they're certified. But we partnered with the police department, and they had their members that were techs and our members, and we did an event up at the fire headquarters on a Saturday. Parents could come in, or grandparents, anybody that wanted their car seat checked. And while they were there, they could also go into our training room, and we would teach them infant CPR. So that was another great way to reach that kind of age in our community that we normally wouldn't be able to reach, and give them some valuable information. So that's kind of one of our big focuses. And like I said, it's about, how do we get those public service announcements out ahead of time, and how do we get the emergency messages out most effectively when the time comes.
I guess maybe a final point of reflection. So how, in your opinion, how's the firefighter profession changed since you joined the department, and where's it headed?
So there's been a lot of changes. I mean, in the department itself, obviously we continue to grow and try to keep up with the growth in Shrewsbury and the officer positions and all that I talked about. In the fire service in general, there's a bunch of things. I'm sure everybody's heard about the PFAS and firefighter cancer, and that's all over the news. It was in the firefighting foam that we used for years. That's been taken out now. It's in the turnout gear, the protective equipment, right? Kind of an oxy. The protective equipment that we wear is causing cancer for the firefighters. So, the state of Massachusetts actually was the first in the state to put out a law saying the first step was that they had to label it that it contains PFAS chemicals, and then the second part was that within a couple of years you won't be able to sell turnout gear that contains PFAS in the state. So Massachusetts was the first in the country to do that, which is great. But now the industry has to catch up to that and be able to develop and produce a good quality set of turnout gear that will actually protect us the way the other one did, and not have that chemical. So certainly the PFAS, as well as just the cleaning the gear. We wash the gear every time there's a fire. We have big commercial extractors, big commercial washing machines at each station, and we wash that. When I got on, you never washed your gear, right? It was kind of a badge of honor that you would have sooty, dirty gear and helmet and everything like that. Now, now if you don't wash it, your officer is telling you need to go wash it. And as a result, we now have 2 sets of gear for everybody, so that if they have a fire at the start of their shift, they can come back. That set goes in the wash to get cleaned, and they have a second set that they can use until the other set is washed and then dried. So certainly that's a big thing. Building construction, building materials, furnishings have all changed. What they refer to as legacy, construction and legacy furnishings, like you would have in your 1950s and 60s home, predominantly wood, right? The furnishings were wood or cotton, stuff like that. Now everything is synthetics, right? So the siding is vinyl, so it melts and drips and burns and spreads fast. Instead of having full-size dimensional lumber for framing, a lot of it is trusses, lightweight truss construction, so much smaller dimensions that can fail with 5 minutes of fire impingement on it. It could fail versus considerably longer time with dimensional lumber.
Right.
Ventilation, like the soffits now going up. So we've had a lot of fires that start on the outside and they just burn right up the front, and they go in the soffit, which is intended for ventilation and to allow your attic to breathe. Well, it also lets all the fire go right in to the attic. So the state actually, a number of years ago, actually put out updated the fire codes to where you can't put mulch or any other combustible material within 18 inches of a building, because they were having a lot of, somebody flicks a cigarette butt into the mulch,
Right.
and all of a sudden the vinyl siding, and now you've got this, within a matter of minutes, this significant fire. So fires grow as a result of all these synthetics. The fires grow much faster, they spread much faster, and they burn a lot hotter, because the plastics and the synthetics put out a lot more BTUs, a lot more heat than just the wood and the cotton and the old traditional materials. So that's been a huge change that's affected. When they grow faster, now all the gases in the house, which can create flashover conditions, which is basically where everything in the room, you have the superheated gases, and all the furnishings and everything from floor to ceiling all just ignite instantaneously. So firefighters were getting trapped in that because the fire was growing faster and hotter, as well as because of earlier notification. So firefighters were getting there, whereas before, either it hadn't grown that fast, or a window would fail and let it vent, right? Whereas now all of a sudden you have double and triple pane windows that don't fail, that hold the heat in, the sophisticated alarm systems that were getting notified earlier. So firefighters were actually going in and they were getting themselves in trouble because they were putting themselves in a place that they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of changes like that along the way, but still the basics of firefighting is still the same great job. You still have dedicated firefighters. A lot of the traditions that they did 100 years ago still happen, right? That's the fire service, 100 years of tradition unimpeded by progress, some people say. So
Like the mustache.
and that is a true, like the mustache. We have a lot of firefighters with mustaches. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Your perspective and insight into the department and where you see it heading over your tenure as chief and into the future is a continual progress and continual change, like so many other aspects of local government. And thanks for your continued leadership in this area and moving the department in that way, especially with the public engagement and thinking of ways to better, protect our firefighters. As you were going through some of those changes, you started off with kind of the protection of the firefighters. Firefighters have always protected all of us, and now with cancer and all those other challenges that have been introduced into buildings and other aspects of life, it's good that we're spending time to focus on safety of the firefighters. Long overdue. So thanks for your leadership in those areas, but and really moving the department in the direction of being one of the best fire departments in the world. Just like we say for the town of Shrewsbury, being the best local government in the world. So
That's what we strive for.
that's right. So that takes us to our The Best Fun segment. So I know you have a particularly old, I don't even know if it's classic. It might be pre-classic automobile.
Yeah, pre-classic.
So my question for you that Taylor and I will also answer is, what is the best, the most fun, interesting car that you've ever driven?
I mean, I don't know if it's the best car I've ever driven, but yeah, we have a 1920 Cleveland Tourer. So it was made in Cleveland. It's pretty much all original. I think we're the third family to own it. It was originally purchased by a farmer up in New Hampshire.
Okay.
In 1920, and the story we were told when we purchased it was that this farmer went into the local car dealership, and he made an agreement with the salesman that if the car could go faster than his horse, he would buy the car. The car beat the horse, and he bought the car.
Really?
So that's the story that we were told.
That's
so it's kind of
interesting.
neat that it's always been, it's always been in New England, and like I said, we're only the third in 106 years. We're only the third family to own it. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
You drive it a lot?
At the moment,
No.
at the moment we're working on the water pump, so we're not driving it anywhere. But that is right. Anything that age, obviously, every time you drive, you have to do something to it to maintain it. But yeah, it's a constant project. But And you
So
know,
describe it. What's it look like?
when it was new, it did 70 miles an hour.
Well, that farmer's horse didn't have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, we don't go. I don't think I think 35 was the max that I've had it at.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was no traffic back then. And it only has rear mechanical brakes. There's no brakes in the front, so it doesn't.
So
it'd be
open air.
terrifying. It's all open. Yeah, it has a top that retracts, so it's kind of a convertible,
Sure.
you could say, but wooden steering wheel and.
70 miles an hour, though. Huh?
That's I've actually got documentation. It did an endurance test, so it went for an hour, and after the first hour, it was like 71 point something miles an hour that it averaged for the first hour. Yeah. But I couldn't imagine.
Yeah. The farmer should have Googled it before I went in there and made that bet that he had to buy it if it beat his horse.
Yeah. But then I guess when
interesting.
he traded it in or sold it back to the dealership, the dealer was actually the one that kept it. He was the second. He was the second owner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it didn't go far.
Yeah. So it never really. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yep.
All right, Taylor. Any fun driving stories?
No.
That's okay. You're a Jeep.
None that
we
you
know
can
that.
tell.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, define fun. I mean, I had my run of like 3 flat tires in like a month this past summer, so that was fun and definitely the best.
You changed a lot of tires in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I have to say thank you to my dad for helping me. No, I used to have a VW Bug.
Yeah.
That was my first car. My sister now is the owner of it, but that was a fun car to drive around. I do like my Jeep though, because I like taking the roof off during the summer, the nice weather. So maybe I'll be able to drive some cooler cars.
Just like a 1920s.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I had the fun opportunity to do a NASCAR driving experience. I'm a NASCAR fan, so I went up to New Hampshire one afternoon and got to drive a former Winston, I think it was Winston Cup Series, maybe it was Sprint Cup Series back then whenever I went. On the track at New Hampshire, 5 or 6 laps. Only went a little bit faster than the Cleveland can, a little over 100 miles an hour. It's a small track up there, but I had a lot of fun. It was a very interesting experience. So, all good.
High speeds.
Yeah. Well, Chief Colby, we really appreciate you coming on. It's been another fun episode. It's good to talk with you again. Second time on. No one's been on 3 times yet, so maybe you could take that prize sometime in the near future. Just a reminder to all of our listeners, if you have a question or comment, you can always reach Taylor and I at tmdownload@shrewsburyma.gov. On behalf of Taylor Galusha, I'm Kevin Mizikar. Thank you for listening.